My topic today is optimizing athlete health and performance. Now we must, what can athletics learn from football and vice versa? My background is that I was a track and field athlete who turned out to be a football doctor. I'm also the Swede who went to live in Qatar, being the chief medical officer of Aspetar, which I'm very proud of. I am also very proud of being the team doctor for the Swedish national team in football when we took a bronze medal in the World Cup in US '94, still considered the best team performance ever done in Sweden. But I am even more impressed by the Qatar national football team being Asian champions 2019, having a selection base of only 6,300 players. That is fantastic. I'm really proud of working in this country and in this environment. Now, the facts I'm going to present are coming from football. I'm leading the UEFA Elite Club Injury Study, which is a study that was initiated by UEFA, the European Football Association, in 2001 with the aim to get information of how to protect the health of the players, to avoid injuries. And UEFA invites the 32 teams that qualify for the ground play in the European Champions League to participate in this injury study. And it has continued for 19 years. We have a very large database, 55 clubs from 20 countries, 24,000 injuries. All the best teams, as you can see, participate in this study. Real Madrid, for example, has sent us data every month for 19 years. They don't do that to be nice to us. They do it because they get information back. And I will share some information with you, some experience we have done in football over these 19 years, which might be interesting also for other sports like track and field. The bottom line is, for elite sport, professional sport, is performance. And we clearly showed in a study that injuries are correlated to performance. If you want to perform well, you need to avoid injury and illness. It seems natural, of course, but it's not scientifically proven before. So avoiding injuries and illness, that's a key for performance. And we have the facts. It's open access if you want to read this study. A second study is a practical question. How often can an athlete or a team compete? We certainly have that in football. In football at the top level, in the Champions League, for example, now in Europe, they play 2 matches a week in the league and in Champions League. And there is always a debate do they really have the possibility to recover after these matches. It must be the same in many other sports, like in track and field. If you are a 1,500 meter, 5,000 or 10,000 meter runner, how often could you compete? And remember, it's in football, it's not the 90 minutes of playing. They are used to that. It's all the mental things about it. Going to a new city, going to a new hotel, having sleeping problems, having all these media concentrating and so on. So it's more in football of a mental fatigue than a physical fatigue. But that must be the same in other sports. We have studied that problem to evaluate from a medical point of view what is the ideal. So when I visit teams as well. I've tried to get also contact with the coach and the manager. The question I always ask is for the manager which is the most important medical issue for the performance of your team? And most of them, football coaches, they have answered exactly what Mr. Ancelotti here did: restitution. How often how soon after a match can I implement high quality training? Because for coaches, and I actually have a coaching license in Sweden as well, even if I've not coached any teams, but I know it from the football field. The mantra for football coaches is football specificity. They want to mimic everything on training, what they're going to do on matches. I'm sure you can talk to Dr. Professor Walter Di Salvo here, who is really a hotshot in managing and so on. But this is a mantra. So they want to have high quality training. And they ask, when can I have that? How much rest and restitution do I need in between? This is a very important question, a very important medical question. We have studied that. First of all, we did a study and see what if the effects if you play too many matches. The effects is if you play too many matches, you get more muscle injuries. That is clearly shown. And then the question is, but how much rest do you need between the matches to avoid muscle injuries? And the discussion, I go back and say, the discussion in football is, should there be 2 or 3 days between matches? That's what they discuss. But this doesn't seem to be enough, because when we studied how was the injury risk after of a number of days between matches, it took up to 5 days before the injury risk was lower to normal. Normally, when we discuss muscles, we say that it takes 72 hours to get the muscle restituted. But that is because most studies do not follow them longer than 72 hours. This might be an indirect sort of pointing out that there might be other things, muscle variables, which need longer to restitute. So the question is, the solution for the football team is to rotate the players, not to have them playing with too little restitution between matches. Another question which you get from every injured athlete is, when can he or she go back to training and matches, full training and match? So that is the question where we, as medical people, need to provide answers. Media, agents, everybody ask about how long does it take. We have answers to that, but then when the answers we have are football specific, so you need to know what are the definitions in our study. Our definition of injury is time loss injury. That's an injury causing absence of full training or match. Other sports have complaints as well. It's not practical to use in football complaints because everybody has pain after a hard football match. Believe me, I've been in many locker rooms. They have pain after a match. We have rehabilitation consider that a player is considered injured until team medical staff allows full participation in training and availability for match selection. So it's a decision of the medical team. So every re-injury, which we define as within 2 months of the same injury coming back within 2 months, is in fact a failure of the medical team, because the medical team have given an okay, but then they have a re-injury. It's not as simple as that. Everybody who's worked in top-level football knows that sometimes the medical team are overruled by managers and coaches. But this is the definition we work with. We have 24,000 injuries in our database, so we have data for every injury about mean, median, minimum, maximum, percentage of re-injury. If we look at the most common injury in football as well as in sprinting is the hamstring injury. We call it the sprinter's injury. It's 13% of all injuries in football. and we have a re-injury percentage of 14% in football, which is quite high. But hamstring injuries need to be divided into severities. You can question if you do imaging on these injuries. I can tell you that all muscle injuries at elite level, they are basically examined clinically. But 87% of all injuries are also do imaging, because and they divide it into four different categories depending on severity. Grade 0 is when there's a normal MRI, no pathology at MRI or sonography. Grade 1 is edema, no tears. Grade 2 is partial rupture, and grade 3 total rupture. As you can see in football, 2 out of 3 muscle injuries in football are not ruptures. They are minor injuries. Still, they cause 50% of absence in a team. This was an interesting finding because I'm also an orthopedic surgeon, and we are used to see the severe injuries. And the question at congresses is often, do you operate? What type of operation? And I would say during 20 years of having all these teams in Champions League, we have only had about a maximum 10 cases that needed operation on, surgery on. The problem on the sports field are the minor injuries. They never go to hospital. The hospital people always think that the muscle injury is a muscle rupture. This is not the case on the field. So we can say that roughly, if they have a normal MRI, no pathological finding, they can go back to full training within a week. If they have a grade 1 edema, no rupture, about 2 weeks. Grade 2 about 3 weeks, and grade 3 with total ruptures takes a longer time, as everybody knows. The problem for us is not overusing. That's a problem in track and field. It's not a big thing in football. Overuse injuries causing absence. As you can see, 1 or 2% of all injuries. But we are very bad in football in handling these injuries. You're probably much better in track and field. Because look at the return to play, it's about a week. And acute knee synovitis, acute Achilles tendinopathy, acute patellar tendinopathy, or ankle synovitis, they go back after about a week. But we have re-injury rates, which is a catastrophe. This indicates that they go back too early. We underestimate the problem with overuse problems in football. You are probably much better in athletics. So this is something where we need to improve in football. If we look at, we have one of our members in the research group, my young guy here. She's a Danish national team player, played over 100 matches in the Danish national team. She's a physiotherapist. She started Achilles tendinopathy, and she found out that the mean return to play median was 9 days. But she found out if they kept an acute Achilles tendinopathy for rehabilitation more than 10 days, they had significantly less re-injury rate. But the majority went back earlier and had a high re-injury rate. So maybe better be safe than quick. Now the question is, have we succeeded in diminishing injuries? For the first 12 years, we were disappointed. The injury rate was still the same as when we started. Some injuries even increased, like the hamstring injuries. So we were surprised because we know from so many good studies how to prevent, for example, hamstring injuries in football, in amateurs and youth level. But obviously, the traditional way of preventing injuries for athletes is providing the athletes with a training program. This is shown in many studies very effective, but obviously probably not enough on elite level. There are other factors that are need to be considered. What we did was we gather all the team doctors every year to one-day meeting where we discuss different topics. So in 2012, we were in Porto, in Portugal, and this is the photo. We asked the best team doctors in Europe, and we said, you working 24/7 with the top elite level football players, what do you think are the most important factors to prevent injuries in elite football? They came up with some very surprising fact. I would have guessed that they would say economy. If we have a good economy, we could have more doctors, more physios, better equipment, and so on. They didn't even mention economy. They mentioned 4 factors which were really a surprise to me. The first factor they mention is leadership style of coaches. The second, load on the players. The third, internal communication within the club. And fourth, well-being of players. For me, I'm working in a university institution with general population health, and it's the same as in any working place. Leadership style of bosses is correlated to injury health situation in a working place. There's many studies that have shown that. Load on players is well known. If you load a person too much, they get burned out. If you load them too little, they get understimulated and bored. Internal communication is shown also in many studies is very important for performance and health. Well-being of players is also the same for any employees in a working place, but it's about matters outside the work and outside the pitch. Do you have any friends? Do you have a good relation? Do you sleep at night? That's like for everybody of us, and that goes for football players as well. The problem is that these factors are too little studied in sports medicine. We have done studies in all these 4, and I can share some result with you. First, we published about the correlation between coaches' behavior, coaches' leadership, and injuries. This is open access, British Journal of Sports Medicine. You can all read it. And we found that that coach behavior is correlated to less injuries and a higher player availability. In the literature, the most effective leadership style in business and so on is supposed to be the democratic leadership style, where you involve the employees in plans and so on, and decision making. The majority of football coaches are authoritarian, like in military. They really point with the whole hand, and they do not ask the players how they want to play. That is one fact. But among the coaches, giving encouragement and recognition was correlated to healthy players, and treat staff and players like individuals. We have in Manchester United, for example, Sir Alex Ferguson said to the team doctor Steve McNally, I've chosen you because you are the best. I have full confidence in you. You are doing a great job. Anyone you tell that and do their best. So this is normal good behavior. Further, to foster trust, involvement, and cooperation was also correlated to good healthy figures. Like the German manager who said after Germany won the World Cup, if you want to achieve a success like this, then the whole team has to work perfectly like a machine, and all the pieces of the puzzle need to fit together into one piece. Many coaches are very good in their coaching behavior, but I can tell you there are some that are really bad. And we could clearly see that in the injury situation. Load on players is, of course, important. That's very much studied. We still have studies ongoing. We have a colleague, Alan McCall, who is doing specific studies on that. We found that there is a correlation between the acute chronic internal workload measured by RPE, rate of perceived exertion. However, in our study, this was not good enough to predict injuries. And that is the whole key. We want to have load measurements so we could predict which injuries that are to be injured. We are not there yet, or at least it's not proven. Internal communication was very important, and especially the communication between the medical staff and the coaching staff. Again, most communications were good, but the bad examples were, we had, for example, one Champions League team where the new manager told the head medical officer, I don't want to have contact with you, you can talk with my assistant. That is not a good way of creating communication. Sleep is very interesting in most Champions League clubs, and I guess that must be the same for track and field athletes. And there are some clubs that really evaluate the sleep, and they have rules for players, and they measure how they sleep and so on. And there have been studies showing that athletes who sleep less than 8 hours per night have a greater risk of being injured. So this is also underestimated. Sleep is also a way of restitution. And I think that more and more elite football clubs have found that, but I think that is valuable in other sports like track and field as well. Good news. We have a decrease in injury rates during the latest year. I don't know what the reason is for this, but it might be that all clubs that meet every year and they are aware of these other factors that can be important for injury prevention. So the mantra we have in football is that if we want to prevent injuries at professional level in football, we need to think bigger and we need to work together. And it might be the same in other sports like athletics, preventing injuries in professional athletes. Maybe we should think of other factors, not only training of muscle strength, muscle strength, but also things like relations, sleep, leadership style, communication, and the coaches in football. A last question for me: how many are on Twitter? Could you raise your hands? You must be on Twitter because you get information about the newest things long time before you read it in newspapers. So that's a very good way of keeping updated to the front